What up, guys? So today's video is going to give you 10 ideas on how to improve in Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Not if you watch any of my videos, you normally know that I'm kind of long-winded. I'm going to try to keep that down and condense it just a little bit. And we're going to go through 10 ideas. And these ideas, you could use them if you're a brand new white belt all the way into a black belt. I still use them and then on. And I'm doing this video now because we're just coming out of January and a lot of people are signing up to gyms. You're coming back to gyms and everybody wants to get a little better faster. So I'm going to give you 10 ideas to add a little bit more focus and be a little bit more deliberate with your training and some different ideas that could help you get more from yourself on the mat. So hopefully this video helps you guys and let's get into it. What up, guys? So as we're getting into the new year, I wanted to make a video because I know I get a lot of newer people coming into Jiu-Jitsu to give you some ideas on how to improve in Jiu-Jitsu and how to get good at it in the new year. And again, you can take these ideas and I don't think you ever outgrow them. They're sort of timeless. So you can use them from now until you're a black belt like me because I still use a lot of these ideas. And again, you can take these into your training. They're very important. It's stuff that I wish I would have done in some cases when I was a white belt. And so with that said, let's jump into these ideas. I'm going to give you 10 of them of how to get good at Jiu-Jitsu. So over the last few years, I've been traveling a lot and I've had the chance to talk to a lot of different black belts. And one of the questions that I like asking them is whether they drill or they just do rolling. And then I also like to ask them is if you could go back and tell yourself to do something differently when you're a white belt, what would it be? And surprisingly, almost unanimously, one of the things that pops up is that they wish they wouldn't have just tried to roll to win all the time. Now they word it differently in different ways, but basically it's like, don't roll just to win all the time. And I definitely agree with that because that's one of the biggest problems I had when I was a pretty new white belt where I came into it and I wanted to be good at this thing. And so all I was focused on doing was having gym wars and trying to beat everybody. But the issue is that learning and performance are a little different. The line can be kind of thin because, when we learn techniques, we're trying to use them against people and beat them. And there's a competitive element to it. But at the same time, when you look at the way you train versus the way you compete, it's very different, right? And again, there are times where maybe we're doing competition training and we're getting ready for a competition and we need to access that side of ourselves. But when it comes to the gym and you're trying to make yourself better and improve in Jiu-Jitsu, which is what this video is about, you have to be able to train and you have to be able to learn and you have to be able to practice. And practice is not necessarily just trying to win in performance. And again, one of the ideas that I share to my students and I share to anybody that will listen is practice doesn't count. Repeat that to yourself often. Practice doesn't count. It's very important. So the first tip, don't just roll to win. Number two, forget about trying to remember everything. This is one of the big problems that a lot of you guys have in Jiu-Jitsu now because you guys essentially have this information buffet. I didn't have this when I first started 20 plus years ago. You guys have this information buffet of streaming videos, instructionals, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram is just scrolling. It is this big boundless buffet. Think about a buffet line. You got tons of food, but you got this plate. You can only put so much on there at any given point. And so again, you don't have to remember everything to be good at Jiu-Jitsu. This is super important because a lot of people think that they do, but you don't. One of the quotes that I love using over and over again on this channel, it's so important, is that Roger Gracie, one of the best of Jiu-Jitsu of all time, one of the GOATs, he said that, on his techniques, he knows a lot of stuff. He's good at a lot of stuff, but the stuff that he's mastered, he can count on his hands. He can count on his fingers. And you got to understand that this is what's going to happen with your Jiu-Jitsu. You are going to have these techniques and these moves that you get very, very good at. And there's going to be a lot of Jiu-Jitsu around it that you're good at, but this is going to be the stuff that you master. And so when it comes to Jiu-Jitsu, if you don't remember everything, it's okay. And remember, this stuff is, you never really finish Jiu-Jitsu. You keep doing it forever. I still learn new things all the time. And I've been doing this stuff for 20 plus years. So again, that never stops. There's always more stuff out there. But understand that you remembering everything is not nearly as important as what you decide to take in and what you become effective with. Number three, one of the most important ideas that you can implement into your regular training is rolling with a focus. I think this idea is so important. I wrote a whole ebook about it that gives you 12 different strategies to implement it into your open rolling. So if you go to an open mat or your gym's doing open rolling, whatever it is, you can implement strategies to improve your focus and actually get better at Jiu-Jitsu opposed to just sort of going with the flow. Because as I said, rolling or training and practice and learning is different than just simply performing. They're different things. And you have to sort of bring in this deliberate practice element and you have to roll with some level of focus in your training if you want to improve faster, if you want to get better at it. And so what you want to do on a regular basis, pretty much consistently all the time is that when you're training and you're trying to learn and you're trying to get better, you should be trying to think about what techniques, what positions, what things am I actually trying to use and get better at versus I'm here to just roll. There's nothing wrong with coming into roll and getting into that flow state and just kind of going with it. That can be a beautiful thing. It can take the edge off. It can just blow off some steam. It's beautiful. But if you're trying to get better, if you're trying to improve, you should be stepping on the mat with a clear focus as to what is the technique that I'm trying to use, what am I trying to get better with, these kinds of things. One of my buddies, Bernardo Faria, I remember talking to him on the podcast, and one of the strategies that he used to help win multiple world titles was when he would step on the mat, he would have one submission in mind or one technique in mind, and he would just try to use it in every single roll that he could. And again, you may not be a super high level black belt and you can control this stuff like maybe Bernardo or maybe even I can. But one of the things you can do is you can think about what positions are you getting to, what's a technique you can do from there, and then focus on making that happen. But again, there's a lot of ways to implement this, but you should have a focus when you step on the mat if you want to improve in jiu-jitsu faster. Number 4, to help improve your ability to focus, stop saving all the TikTok reels and Instagram reels and just hundreds and hundreds of videos. Again, this is something that's newer to you guys than it is to me, because this obviously was not a problem 20 plus years ago, but it's something I see a lot of my students deal with where, they're bouncing all over the place from one thing to the next, and they have no clear focus for any length of time with their jiu-jitsu. And one of my students just recently showed me like hundreds of reels saved. And I'm like, that's too much information. You're not going to get that. And all this information is like 1 minute long. Like you can't crack open the deeper meanings of techniques and the deeper conceptions of techniques in a minute, right? It takes a little bit longer than that. So again, you want to be careful with the information that you try to consume. And when you find something you like, when you find an instructional, whether you find a long form YouTube video, whatever it is, you find something that you're going to try to use, stop consuming more information. Focus on that thing. Because again, the process of implementing techniques in jiu-jitsu is not an easy one. You're trying to take this information that someone's giving you, and you're then trying to put it through this arduous task of rolling, drilling, making lots of mistakes. You're getting smashed on the mat because of it. You're going through all this stuff. It's a physical and emotional thing, right? And then you got to go back and rewatch the stuff again. It's a process. And so again, when you go through consuming information, you also want to balance the amount of time you give to digest it. Does that make sense? And so again, when you find something you like, just stop watching other stuff. And again, this is just me personally. I would sort of recommend you to focus on longer form content where you can listen to someone who's not limited by a very short window of explanation. But that said, if you do find something in like a short clip that you're like, oh, that's a really cool pass. Maybe they show you a match or something. Try to find that in longer form content so you can really dig into it and focus on that stuff for like weeks at a time. And anytime I'm trying to implement a new technique or position, I sort of give myself at least a minimum of 4 weeks. You don't have to do that, but that's kind of my rule of thumb. 4 weeks to really get it going and then sort of figure out whether or not I want to keep doing that or if I want to move on. Number 5 is to do some form of drilling, whether that be passive or active. Now, real quick, when I say drilling, I don't mean like the do 3 to 5 reps of it. That's a lot of times you see in jiu-jitsu gyms where they're like doing really slow repetitions. That's you sort of figuring the technique out. Drilling a lot of times happens after you've actually learned the technique, and we begin to add things like giving you a look. Like for instance, if I'm doing a takedown, I'm doing them. I have a partner. We're both in our stance. We're moving around. We're hand fighting lightly, and I'm looking for my opening, and they're going to give me a particular look so I can look for that particular thing to happen. In some cases, they may stop one takedown, which forces me to do the next thing, right? And then you get into active forms of drilling where we do situational rolls and we have certain restraints there, right? So there's all kinds of different ways to do this, but you want to do some form of drilling with it. And again, I know that a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, because they just want to believe this, like, oh, I don't need to do reps. I don't need to do drills or anything like that. Look, man, there's a reason why you see boxers hitting pads who are getting paid like $40 million to hit someone, right? Like there's a reason why you see it at the Olympic level, at the college level of wrestling. It works, right? In a lot of the best gyms, they do some form of drilling. And then again, you can do this in a passive and active form. And a lot of the active form takes on just very focused rolling. But nonetheless, you want to get some time in with these positions. You want to get a feel for them. You want to understand how they work because you're taking this procedural and conceptual information from instructional. Then you have to actually put that stuff into practice and you have to get feedback from it. How does it work? And with the conceptual stuff, you have to figure out like, well, okay, like I'm supposed to remove the post, and you have to get the feeling for these things. This is not just a heady thing. This is something we have to feel in our body. You have to develop this intuitive feeling that comes from actually drilling the techniques, getting reps with them, and actually using them during rolling. So again, get some time with those positions. After you stopped consuming more information, go do some work with them. Number 6 is go compete. Now, if you don't want to compete, you can skip this one, go to the next one. But if competing is something you're interested in, competing is one of these things where it gives you a sense of urgency that is really hard to replicate, which makes you train harder. It makes you more focused as you're leading up to this competition. And then also too, when you go to the competition, in many cases, your game falls apart. Under the stress, it breaks, and you get a lot of valuable feedback from it that helps improve your game for later on. It's a lot of fun too. A lot of people enjoy it. It's why we do it. And also too with competitions, for some of you that struggle with being aggressive, a lot of times I've seen this happen where I will have a student who's not very aggressive go to a competition. They feel the aggression of a competition, and then they come back to the gym and it's like all of a sudden they've unlocked it. They've figured out, okay, this is what aggression feels like. It basically gives them another gear that they can turn into. I can't explain why that happens, but I've seen it happen so many times where a student who goes to a competition comes back way more aggressive or has the ability to become more aggressive. So again, I encourage people to compete in jiu-jitsu if you have the urge to do it. If you don't, no reason to. You don't have. It's not mandatory, but I think it has value for your game and helping you improve faster. Now, here's some other ideas. Number 7 is get a battle buddy. This is one of the secrets, I think, of my jiu-jitsu for a long time, is that I always had good relationships with my training partners. Early on, I had a roommate who literally, like, we did everything together and we trained together all the time. And when you have good training partners, you have this accountability because they're like, hey, bro, where are you at? You know, hey, where are you? Why aren't you training? Whatever. And then on top of that, you also have a situation where you're feeding off of each other. A lot of my closest training partners, we're constantly figuring out how to beat each other, right? Because I'll pass their guard, they figure out how to sweep me. They catch me in a leg lock, I figure out how to defend it. And we play this game, and it makes us much, much better, because then our game gets even sharper because they're making us have to critique it. And so I encourage you that when you're training, develop a strong relationship with some of your training partners. Again, you want to do this anyway because jiu-jitsu is a hell of a lot more fun with people, right? But again, find those training partners that are maybe close to the same weight or skill or whatever it is that you get good rolls with, and develop a good training relationship with them and make them, like I said, I call them battle buddies, right? Where those are your people, those are your go-to rolls, those are your go-to drilling partners, your go-to training partners, where you guys begin to sort of battle with each other and you're trying to figure out how to beat one another in a beautiful thing of competitive, friendly, back and forth, I guess you would say. But again, it's a really important idea. Get a battle buddy. If you were like I was when I was young and have a roommate, fantastic. But if not, just develop a good relationship with one of your training partners. Number 8, treat your life off the mats as an extension of your training. This is really important, and I think it's one of the sort of hidden benefits of jiu-jitsu, because a lot of people sort of live these lifestyles where they're eating terrible food, they're drinking too much, they don't sleep enough, they do all these different things that really don't lead to them being healthier, stronger people, but they don't have any feedback from it because they work in an office and they just sort of go about their life. They feel all right. But then they come into the gym and they get that immediate feedback. They ate that big old greasy cheeseburger, they went into the gym and they feel like they're about to yak. They drank too much caffeine that day and they feel like they're about to like friggin' have their heart beat out of their chest. So it's like, lay off the caffeine. They drink more water, or they get up in the morning to go lift weights or train or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they feel exhausted because they didn't sleep because they were drinking too much last night. It makes you start to have feedback from those decisions, which I think is a beautiful thing, and it helps lead people to get more healthy and to make better decisions when they're off the mats. But whether or not you're doing that yet or not, it's really important. I think it's important, one, the older you get, because the older we get, the less wiggle room we have on that kind of stuff, right? But also, too, the higher in skill you get. Early on, sometimes you can get away with stuff, but as you start to get into those higher performance rungs and you get better and better, every little percentage that you can squeak out of yourself is more important. And again, I know someone might comment, well, so-and-so eats candy or so-and-so eats cheeseburgers every day and they train. They accomplish the things that they do in spite of their diet, not because of it. Just because they ate the greasy cheeseburger does not mean that's the reason that they won worlds. Because they ate the candy does not mean they did this. Okay, so again, a good diet, anybody that I've ever gotten to work with, like my coach Eli or anything like that, it radically changes people. If you can get people to stop drinking so much, if you can get them to sleep more, they notice their jiu-jitsu gets better. So again, it's really, really important. Treat your life off the mats as an extension of your training on the mats. Number 9 is lift some weights. Now this is coming from a meathead, so take it for what you will. But again, lift weights, strength train. You can do different ways of doing this, body weight stuff, whatever you want to do. But one of the things that I talk to with my podcast co-host, Eugene, is that strength training is one of the best things that you can do to protect yourself against injury, right? And this is sort of unanimous with physical therapists and from the data that we have on the studies that we've done. Again, if you want to be more resistant against injury, if you want to have better performance, if you just want to look a little better with your clothes off, lift some weights, it's a good idea. Shameless plug, if you guys want to check out a cool series that I created with my coach Eli on lifting weights and balancing it with Jiu-Jitsu, check the links down below for the Swollen Roll. I'll give you guys a special YouTube discount for it. But again, lifting weights is really important. I think most of us know this, but a lot of times people don't have programs. So get one of those. And then again, just find a place into it. It doesn't have to be like 4 or 5 days a week. You can lift a couple days a week and get benefits from it. But again, if you want to have better performance, you want to be more resistant to injury, and you want to look a little bit better with your clothes off, start lifting weights if you don't do it already. Number 10, be patient. So understand that everybody that you see on the mat that's good, it took them a while to get there. Every black belt that you see on the mat, they didn't get there very quickly, right? It was a long process in most cases, right? The few, sort of examples or the few sort of anomalies that got their black belts in 3 years or whatever, those are very few and far between. For most of us, it's a long slog, and you just have to dig in and you have to do it. One of the black belt guys that I know, I remember he told me this, he said it's not about who was the best, it's who's left. Because a lot of us who started, we saw people that were far more technical than us, that were more talented than us, but they quit. We kept going, and now we have the skill and they don't. I've seen this happen plenty of times where when I started early on, I was not very a natural at jiu-jitsu. I just wasn't. And I got into it and I worked really hard, and a lot of times guys would come in and they were far more talented than me naturally. They were more athletically gifted. They were more technical than me right out of the gate. They just sort of grasped things that I just didn't for whatever reason, but I kept going, right? And again, if this is something you enjoy, and this is something you want to improve at, then that's the path. You have to be resilient. You have to stay focused. You have to have endurance for this thing. There's going to be ups and downs, highs, lows, injuries and emotional breakdowns, whatever. It's all going to come. Jiu-jitsu is a microcosm for all that stuff, right? But that said, again, you have to have patience for it. So as you're going through this process of improving, remember, it's not an instant thing. As we were talking about earlier in the video, when you're adding new techniques into your game, it's not a quick process. It's not like an overnight thing. You don't watch the video and it's like the Matrix where I know Kung Fu. It doesn't work that way, right? It's a long process where we're having to take multiple weeks and sometimes longer to develop these techniques and this muscle memory and these movement patterns so that we can execute these techniques. And again, in the process of doing that, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of frustration, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So be patient in your journey, right? Again, it's just really important. And I know a lot of times we live in a world where everything's fast paced now. And if we don't have something to show for our efforts, some sort of thing, we feel like we're not making an effort. We're not making some sort of forward progress. But a lot of times jiu-jitsu is like, you just seem like you're hovering there, and then all of a sudden you'll have these jumps and you can't explain why, it just happens. And then there are other times where you feel like you're doing really well and you're making this incremental progress. And then sometimes it feels like you're just doing a bottomed out, but then it's followed by a shift back up. So it's all over the place. It looks like a stock ticker. If you look at like the little green line, like with stocks, they're doing this all the time, right? So anyways, guys, that's 10 ideas on how to improve in jiu-jitsu. Again, this is stuff that I think you could use at any time. I tried to be as quick as I could with the explanations. I know a lot of times I tend to be on these long like monologues with the videos and stuff like that, but I tried to make it as quick as possible for you so you could take the information. And again, if one of these ideas stuck with you, good, go implement on those. But that said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you're doing well. Again, if you guys want to get my Roll Longer newsletter, which is when you become part of the Chew Crew, you can check the links down below. I send out a daily email giving you ideas on training, diet, lifting, whatever it is I want to do. Books, things like that, just whatever I think might be useful to you. And then along with that, you get that ebook that I mentioned earlier, which will teach you how to roll a little bit more focused in your gym, and it'll give you 12 different strategies to do that. There's also a video included with it to go over the ebook with you in case you don't want to read, and in case you want me to break a couple ideas down to you. So anyway, guys, that is the video. Thank you for being here. Hope you're doing well. Talk to you next time.